Well, hello there. I am drinking a blended coffee from Tierra Mia and Coava, a local roaster. I've always mentioned how I really love the fact that whenever you blend coffees, you're going to get a unique coffee that nobody else will ever drink, especially if it's randomly given to you the way that the Tierra Mia was. It added a lot of sweetness to this coffee, adding the Coava, because it had a lot of mango flavor to it. Anyway, moving on. Talk about books. So today we're going to talk about The Library at Mount Char, written by Scott Hawkins and published in 2016. This was something I picked up because of a book review on YouTube, and I honestly cannot remember the booktuber. And this book, and same with one of the books in the last episode, I really wanted to try and start expanding my horizons on books while still having some of that magical realism to it a little bit, as much as I could. And Love in the Time of Cholera is definitely a case of that. Library at Mount Char, I never heard of this book. I've never heard of Scott Hawkins as an author. And it is definitely, while it's somewhat related to some of the books I've read, like Will of the Many, where there is a prestigious magic school. It's not really magic in this case, but there's a school where these characters are put in it, and there is a instructor in charge that teaches them. Each of the characters, and there's 12 main characters going through the training to learn to be librarians. They each have their own specific catalog that they have to learn, which is a type of knowledge. So languages is one, murder and war is another, healing is another, and they're only allowed to learn their own specific books. And the father, the man who kind of dictates all of that, pretty harsh on all of them, especially the one girl who has to, she explores the land beyond, the land of the dead. And the only way to do that is to die. And so she has to die a lot, and becomes a major portion of her character. The second book is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, published in 2021. This book hit me a lot harder than I expected it to. I've been aware of Susanna Clarke as an author for a long time. My sister's read Jonathan Norrell and Mr. Strange. I remember seeing that book on her shelf whenever I've gone to visit her. I picked up this book specifically because I kind of had a feeling that there was a library portion of it, and I kind of wanted to talk about two different books about libraries. Since I read this one after Library of Mount Char, after the Library of Mount Char. Man, I am having a hell of a time saying that. Mount Char. This book was interesting. It kind of reminded me of a little bit of a China Miéville book, like The City in the City, where you're tossed into something that the narrator, the main character, understands very deeply. And it's a dating system. I mean, as in like the time of the year it is, which the time of the year kind of almost reminds me of Infinite Jest, where it's like the year of the albatross arriving in vestibule whatever, and it's the 9th month of that year. Vestibules and halls are Northwest Hall 22 is an example of one of the locations. So all locations are based off of vestibules and halls and the cardinal directions. And it's very confusing at first. I it took me a couple of times reading the date and the location to really kind of understand what the hell was going on with it. But once you understood that these were journal entries and that this is a character in a specific world, that this is the world where these locations, vestibules and halls are the world that he's in, it kind of becomes more intuitive to understand what he's explaining. I never really had a good mind map of where things actually are in the world, but I think that's okay. And then the other thing is that these halls are populated with statues, and they are incredibly detailed statues, and they sound absolutely beautiful. And one of them that is described initially is a woman carrying a beehive with bees crawling out of it. There's bees crawling over the woman's eye, which makes the character somewhat nauseous. And the bees they're big bees. They are about the size of a thumb, which is, a pretty good sized bee. And the main character is described as being 1.88 meters tall, which is, just a little under 6 feet tall. No, that's around 6 foot tall. While on the face of these two books are wildly different. One is kind of telling the story of a rise to prominence for one character, and the other one is someone rediscovering their own past in this world. I think they do have similar bones in that they are about knowledge and seeking knowledge, and in some cases the cost of that knowledge. With Piranesi's, that's what the main character is called. Is not actually his name, and the character notes that the other who's the other character that's in the beginning of this, most way through this book, the only other character calls him Piranesi, even though Piranesi doesn't think that's his actual name. He doesn't know what his real name is. And part of that is because of the house that everything takes place in. It destroys memories. It erodes them. But through that erosion, he is given this other sort of information. He really starts to catalog every single one of these statues to try and understand what it is. He believes that the house communicates it to him through the way birds fly, the way that they interact with statues within this house. And from it, he's able to determine that certain things are going to happen. And he gains a really intrinsic knowledge of what the house is. He also maps the tides because the lower level of the house is flooded with various oceans coming from different directions. And he's been there long enough that he has a deep understanding of how these tides work, and he's able to calculate the behavior of all of them and uses that to his advantage. But in the library at Mount Char, the library itself is kind of outside of, in the same way that the house is outside of time or outside of our normal space, the library is as well. And even though Carolyn, the main character, the primary protagonist, lives there for an incredibly long amount of time, she only ever describes her lifetime in terms of calendar years. And so she recognizes that there is a disconnect between how long she's lived and how old she looks, and that she looks like what she would be considered on the outside of the world. And that is, she looks 30, but she's lived lifetimes because she's learned thousands of languages. She has 11 siblings, and father is his partner in this endeavor, plus dead ones, which the dead ones are people who have been partially resurrected, but they don't have their actual soul back. So they're just kind of creatures that follow what a portion of their brain had before, but there is clear disconnects between who they really were and who the dead one is. In a same way, Piranesi has a total of 15 people in it, but 13 of them are actual corpses. And it's Piranesi's the other and these 13 other dead ones. The other is really attempting to use Piranesi's to uncover some great mystery and secret knowledge that's in the house. He's so obsessed with it, he misses the inherent beauty of the house that's there and what's already there. He ignores what the statues represent. You know, they believe that this house represents lost knowledge of the ancients, and that you can uncover that knowledge by performing a ritual. I think it's pretty clear that Piranesi's uncovers that the statues then in and of themselves is that knowledge. It is the first person who took a beehive and figured out how to safely handle bees, to get their honey, to domesticate bees. Some of them are representative of gods and massive beings, but that could just be because of how powerful they were and that person was in a past life. And I think that both these stories really are about knowledge and the creation of knowledge, the cost of knowledge if you're pursuing it. Well, in the case of, and I thought this was pretty obvious from the get-go, that in the library of Mount Char, that the reason why Father didn't want anybody to learn from the other catalogs is that learning the other catalogs was the only way to usurp Father and to defeat the other siblings. And I had a sense from the beginning that Carolyn had done that in some manner. And in fact, that was such a prohibitive thing that a very serious torture method was done on one of the children to punish him for teaching somebody else outside of his catalog. And I think that really the punishment was about getting caught, not about the learning. I think Father really did want people to learn and being willing to do so at any cost, because those were the only people that he thought were worthy of taking over his mantle. Of course, that's a little different than what I would argue are in our world, what the cost of knowledge is. You are materially changed. You are not the same person that you were before you started learning. And in some cases, it can radically change you. You know, I think that's part of what Piranesi is saying, is that to really grow and learn and become a more human that understands these past things and truly understands the sublime, it radically changes you. And the normal human experience can't contain the sublime. To truly understand the sublime, in Piranesi's, it's kind of argued that you need to forget modernity. You need to forget the world. You need to forget about what technology is, what our current troubles are in the world. And you need to embrace this ancient way of being and engaging and immersing yourself in that world to become fluent in the language of the house. And I think that Piranesi is able to do that, and he learns how to survive through the house. Whereas the 13 dead, they never were able to. They never turned themselves over into the house. They did forget, but they never learned anything. So they ultimately were killed by the house, whereas Piranesi's learned how to fish, learned how to cook and do a lot of things within the house. In modernity, without art, life isn't really worth living. I think that is another message within Piranesi's. It is a deeply interesting book I think it thinks deeply about art and knowledge and relation to animals and to nature. And I think it's very interesting. Both of these books do indicate that knowledge can be dangerous in the wrong hands. The other is a deeply problematic person. He is exploiting Piranesi. He has basically locked him in this prison without Piranesi's consent, and he has taken advantage of that as much as he could. He hasn't really been willing to sacrifice himself to go and learn things. And I think Carolyn reflects that as well, because when she first usurps father, she thinks she has everything figured out. And she has a friend who she loved in kind of the same way that Florentino Ariza loved Femina Daza in Love in the Time of Cholera. She deeply loves him and wants him to become part of her new life. And she is an angry, spiteful person. So she's initially building this new world on spite and hate, and it is destroying the world. And it takes her a significant amount of time. And the fact that Stephen, who this man was, decided to sacrifice himself rather than just being a pawn in this game. He sacrificed himself to make Carolyn wake up to realize that she's fucking up, that she's doing it wrong, and that she needs to really come back to her empathy to learn what the combined knowledge of the library is and what Stephen is representing. And at that point is when she really is able to grasp how she screwed up and why she screwed up. I found both of these books really refreshing. They offer different ways of thinking about the world. They offer a different look at art, and knowledge, and in some way magic. I mean, they're both magical books, even though they very intentionally refute that they're magical. And they offer joy as a guiding light for both art and Piranesi, and literally in the Library of Mount Char, we learn the sun is literally love and joy and happiness, and from the plane of joy. I mean, they were both great books. I mean, I loved the Library of Mount Char, and then I read Piranesi, and I just was there. Like, Library of Mount Char was a phenomenal book, and this was just a level above it. And then just the quiet and reflective way that Piranesi's end just brought tears to my eyes, because there's just such a deep understanding of what the world was and how far we've gone from what people could be, and the dignity that people should have and that we've lost. And it was really moving. I definitely recommend both of these books. I would maybe put some more space between them so that they can both be enjoyed a little bit more. Yeah, I love them. I really, really recommend these books. I'm going to leave it there. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you think about, how knowledge impacts us, and what the cost is. I'm going to be doing a video in the future about AI, and I think that both these books are deeply pertinent to that conversation, because we're throwing everything into AI and not reckoning with the cost. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment, please leave an emoji. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a good one.